Hello, I'm Richard Sher, and it's time to square off. This is our first of 3 election specials. Here's this week's all-star panel: broadcast legend Frank Luber, talk show host and podcaster Dan Joseph at Dan Joseph America. Is that correct?
Yeah, Dan Joseph's America.
That's good, very good, and it's very good. Attorneys Mary Koch and Square Off original panelist, now in his 41st year. Square Off, the amazing Billy Murphy. All right, November 5th, 1 week from Tuesday, Democrat Kamala Harris squares off against Republican Donald Trump. A new Wall Street Journal poll released Wednesday shows Donald Trump with a slight edge over Kamala Harris, 47 for Trump, 45 for Harris. An Economist U-Government poll, Harris is favored over Trump, 49 to 46%. A Reuters Ipsos 6-day poll has Harris ahead, 46 to 43%. So the polls are within the margin of error, so it's really just a toss-up, which means either Trump or Harris could potentially be the leading person on election day. Many other national polls from CBS, Marist, and USA Today show Trump and Kamala Harris all within the margin of error. Let's open the square off polls with Dan Joseph. Dan-o.
Well, thanks for having me on, Richard. First of all, I would say this. While the race is absolutely within the margin of error right now, it looks like a toss-up in just about all the polls, but I do see some very troubling news for the Harris campaign. Right now, if you look at the state polls, and even some of the national polls, those polls are moving in the direction of former President Trump. They're going that way, and as we know, Trump tends to overperform on election day. So if he goes into election day with even a slight lead in those state polls, there's a good chance that he's going to be elected. Harris, it seems, based on some other polls I've seen, particularly the New York Times Siena poll that came out last week, is having a lot of trouble matching Joe Biden's numbers with Hispanics and with Black men. And if she cannot reach those numbers, I don't see any way for her to win.
Mary, jump in.
I don't even, so I get sick to my stomach whenever I think that Donald Trump might win. And when I go to Canada on 11/9 and he's won, I might stay there. But I don't have any faith in the polls. I really don't. I mean, all we heard in 2022 was red tsunami, red tsunami, red tsunami. And then when all of the dust settled, it was not a red tsunami by any stretch of the imagination. And so I really feel like there's too much emphasis placed on the polls. I really think that, I don't know where this is going to end up. But I do hope that it's Harris, and I do think that nobody's going to know anything till election day or maybe even beyond, like last time.
Frank Luber, good to have you with us.
Well, I think the fact that the polls are showing it's a neck-and-neck race is actually a good sign for Donald Trump to become the 47th president of the United States. And I say that because the polls have been inaccurate for the past several elections. I mean, you go back to the 2016 race, Trump versus Hillary Clinton. They had Hillary Clinton almost in double digits ahead of Trump, and yet Trump won. Then we fast forward to 2020. Joe Biden was up by about 6 points, and we saw what happened. It was a very close race. In fact, I think Biden eventually won by less than 2 points. And then, as Mary indicated, the red tsunami in 2020 or 2022, that never occurred. So the polls have been wrong all along. And here we are again in 2024. The polls are showing a nip and tuck race. And I believe that that's a good sign for Trump. And I predict that Trump will win with 300 to 305 electoral votes.
All right, Billy, it's your turn.
Well, dealing with Dan's point, her problem with black people is not going to really matter because there is little or no relevance to the swing states about that. In those states that are the swing states, there are more than enough black votes to cancel that out. And so instead of looking at the national polls, which are irrelevant, frankly, we need to look at the polls in the 8 swing states. And there's a mixture there. In some of the swing states, Harris is ahead. In some of the swing states, Trump is ahead. And so, given that the swing states are going to decide this election and not the national polls or national vote, which Trump always loses, there has been this movement to eliminate the Electoral College because,
Right.
you know, Trump has lost every election nationally by a wide margin. And so this isn't really a democracy in the sense that the will of the American people is what is respected. It's a remnant of slavery where the Electoral College was created so that the southern states could not be dominated by the northern states who were anti-slave. And
Right.
so race is such a persistent factor in every important event in America. It's very sad.
All right, let me say this. With the campaign coming into the home stretch right now, Donald Trump is holding no punches. And while in Pennsylvania, you saw this on the news, calling Kamala Harris a, quote, shit vice president, adding you have to tell her that you've had enough, that you just can't take it anymore. We can't stand you. Get the hell out of here. You're fired.
Let me deal with that, Richard. Can I deal with that? And
Sure,
I
you can
was
deal with
last, so
You can start.
look, this is great for his base. His base loves this. His base wants him to be profane. His base wants a fuck you attitude from him. That's one of the things that attracts them. His base wants him to be crass. His base wants him to be malevolent. His base wants all of these things that you see Trump doing. And so the fact that it pisses off us Democrats for good and sound reasons and for alarming reasons doesn't matter to his base. And so, although it may piss us off and look obnoxious, crude, vile, whatever names appropriately apply, it's not going to matter to his base.
Well, he can use profanity, but let's not do too much of it on our square off. Dan, I see you want to say.
Yeah,
I'll
no,
never
look,
say the word motherfucker on this show.
I think that
guarantee that.
you know,
Let me-
obviously, I think any normal person, are we okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I think any normal person thinks that Trump is a pretty disgusting guy, that Trump is a pretty disturbed guy, that he's not a particularly bright man when it comes to being the president of the United States or running for the presidency of the United States. And as a result, he sort of lowers himself to this fifth grade boy style humor and political campaigning. And that's too bad. But what he's really doing in a lot of ways is he's sucking up all the oxygen by saying stupider and stupider and more disgusting stuff every single day. And when that happens, it makes it so Harris finds it harder and harder with a relatively normal campaign to get that kind of attention, to get that news attention, to get more oxygen there, which is what she needs right now to get her message out. So it's not just that Donald Trump is a bad person. It's that his strategy is to be as bad as possible and hope that he gets eyeballs.
Do you know the thing that bothers me the most about another Trump? So, I mean, I think it's no one has any delusions or illusions about how I feel about Donald Trump. But I think what really scares me about a second presidency, and I really feel like, let me back up. I really feel like there's going to be a silent majority here that really goes out and moves the vote. And I think it's going to be the same. I think that the thing that the Democrats have going for them and Kamala Harris has going for them is I really do think that the issue of women's rights is such a driving force to get voters out. We have seen states that are as red can be have issues related to women's rights on the ballot, and they have won in those states. They won in Ohio. They won in Kansas. These are things that drive people to the ballot box. And I think the name calling, the rest of it, it's juvenile. I think that's what really people recognize, I think, and I hope drives the people to the ballot box are two things. That Trump is a frightening, unintelligent person, and J.D. Vance in his own way may be more frightening than Trump. That's number one. I think number two is there are no guardrails this go around. The first Trump administration, there were guardrails. There were people who tried to control him, who at least would speak out periodically, and who tried to keep him from doing things that were his worst ideas. There's not going to be any guardrails this time. There will be no guardrails. And that is what I think frightens me the most. And the last thing I'll say is I do not understand his base. He's done nothing for them, literally nothing for them. And yet they continue to vote against their own interests. And that I do not understand.
Yes, you do. It's about race.
It
Let me
is.
say,
Look, it's about inflation.
Let me
Let
say
Billy
that
in, hold it, let Frank in, Bill. Go ahead, Frank.
Look, the crude, vile statements that Trump has been using against Harris and Waltz pale by comparison to some of the things that Harris has called Trump. I mean, she's referred to Trump as Hitler. Can you imagine that?
She never referred to Trump as Hitler. She never called him Hitler. She called him fascist.
Come on.
Oh.
I heard it myself. She's inferred that he's a Hitler, if nothing else. And,
Well,
and,
what
and
call a guy that idolizes Hitler?
that is just insane, ludicrous. Can you
Really?
imagine a Hitler type of person? Look, if he was Hitler, he would have proven that he was Hitler during his first term. If anything, he was most beneficial to all Americans. Every group of Americans, whether it was women, men,
What?
blacks, Latinos, they all benefited through the 4 years of Donald Trump. And
I'm sorry.
if Donald Trump doesn't get in, and Harris and Waltz are in, what we're going to see basically is 5 or 6 states controlling the destiny of this country. All the votes are going to be, in other words, what they want is a popular vote in place of the Electoral College. So they
Let
God
me say
forbid.
something. Hold it. Let me say
minute.
something. Let me.
Hold it, Richard. They want to do away with the Electoral College. They want to pack the Supreme Court. Well, I mean, this is against our Constitution. It's just ludicrous to think that we would even dare vote for the Harris-Waltz team.
Retired General John Kelly, Frank, just to correct some, do fact checking. He was Trump's former chief of staff, as you know. In an interview with The Atlantic, he says, quote, Trump once asked him, why can't you be like the German generals? I need the kind of generals that Hitler had. Continuing, in Trump's words, Hitler did some good things. I don't believe that Kamala Harris compared him to Trump to Hitler. Anyway,
Well, look it up.
Go ahead,
Well, but
Mary.
even if she did, she would have been right. But I'll yield to you, Mary.
So I just have to say, Billy, you said it's about race. It's also about misogyny. It's
Yes.
not just about race. And
Yes.
I'm sorry, Frank, you want to talk about the fact of that we want to get rid of the Electoral College and have the popular vote count. Well, yeah, because you know what? Every vote should count. And the only way every vote counts is if you look at the popular vote. And let me finish, is you look at the popular vote, because it is states like Montana and North Dakota and South Dakota who have very small populations. You're
Frank,
not
you
letting me
can't-
finish.
Frank,
Let me
stop.
finish.
You can't interrupt because your audio, Frank, doesn't come out when someone else is speaking. So let Mary finish, and then we'll keep going. Go ahead, please.
And talk about packing the court, which ties directly into the issue of the misogyny. Trump packed the court with people like Amy Coney Barrett, And I'm going to talk about her for a minute, but he picked people that were anti-choice. He picked people that he knew were going to overturn Roe v. Wade. That's not helping women. That's not helping women at all. He's done nothing to help women. He's done nothing to help the middle class. He's done nothing to help the working poor. He put into place a tax. If somebody doesn't realize by now that trickle down economics is a ridiculous theory and never works, the only thing that happens was corporations reinvested in themselves and workers got no benefit from that. So
All
I'm
right.
sorry, and by the way, I think it is fascist to say that no brown people can come to this country, call other countries shitholes, separate families at the border. All of that is
All right, we're going to stop for
exactly
a
I'm
moment.
Hitler-like.
just saying, and look, to say,
Billy,
uh,
Billy, hold it for just a second because
okay.
we're running long and the voice of Squirrel is getting impatient. We'll get back to the election after we hear from Howard Mallison.
Thank you, Richard. You know, the law firm of Barry Glazer specializes in personal injury, medical malpractice, and nursing home neglect. His creative TV commercials have made him very recognizable, so much so that you can't walk down the street without people coming up and thanking him for telling it like it is. Barry and his team have an in-house doctor and nurse on staff. In fact, you should call Barry before you call the insurance company. His clients will tell you that Barry gets you more compensation than you ever expected. He's that good. Give the law firm of Barry Glazer a call at 410-547-8568 and let them know you heard about him on Square Off. You know, with the World Series and the Ravens' quest for a Super Bowl, what better way to watch the game than going to a Pappas Sports Bar and Restaurant? You can dine in the sports bar surrounded by more big screen TVs than you can imagine, or you can have a gourmet meal in the dining room section of Pappas. Either way, you can enjoy the award-winning Pappas crab cake, imperial crab, and much, much more. Plus, they ship crab cakes all over the country. And yes, Oprah gets her crab cake shipped there all the time, from there all the time. At Pappas, you'll enjoy a dining experience that is second to none. Tell them Richard sent you for the fabulous, what's it
Fab
called, Richard?
cakes,
Fab cake.
fab cakes,
Back,
fab cake.
back to you, Rich.
All right, let me just say Trump campaign advisor Alex Pfeiffer calls Trump's reported Hitler comments absolutely false, flatly rejecting the quotes from the article in Atlantic. All right, go ahead, Billy. You wanted to say something?
Well, Frank, it doesn't evidently bother you that every racist in America loves Trump. It doesn't bother you that every misogynist, every anti-woman, everybody who wants women not to be in control of their own bodies loves Trump. It doesn't bother you that people who adore Hitler, who openly embrace him, love Trump. It doesn't bother you that he lied about his candidates that he was presenting to the Justice Department as being people who he didn't know what their view was going to be.
Really,
It doesn't bother you that they
Hey,
also lied when they were
hey,
on the
All right,
Judiciary
Billy, hold
Committee.
it,
I'm
hold
not
it.
done, Frank. I'm not
Billy,
done. And
Billy,
so I'm
you're
very disappointed.
I'm
I'm
Cut
very
it out.
disappointed that a man as bright as you is willing to embrace a person who has said on numerous occasions he intends to be a dictator
no,
from
come
day
on.
one. That's
All
the
right, stop.
definition of fascism.
All right,
Hold
stop,
it a second,
Billy.
Billy.
Hold it, Frank, because you're using your phone because we had a technical issue. Now you're on clear, Frank. Go ahead and rebut if you'd like, and everybody let Frank talk because his phone is screwing up a little bit. Go ahead, Frank.
Billy, what could be more fascist than what the Democrats want in this country right now? What they want is a one-party rule. Basically, if you go with the popular vote, then you'd have 5 states controlling everything. What is more fascist than that? What is more disconcerting than that? I mean, it's against our Constitution. They want to change. They want to knock out the Constitution. They want to pack the courts. When I say packing the courts, I'm not talking about Trump appointing 3 conservatives to the existing court. I'm talking about adding additional seats to the court, which is packing the court. That's what we're talking about. So anything that the Democrats are advocating right now is going to lead to basically a one-party state. There will be no Republican Party. There'll be no independent party in the future. It'll be nothing more than a Democrat Party.
All right, we're going to hear from Mary.
Well,
and then we're gonna
evidently,
hear from Dan. Wait, Billy, stop.
the whole
Billy,
notion of
hold on.
fascism has
Billy,
gone that way.
we're going to go from Mary to Dan. Mary?
Actually, I was going to yield to Dan first because I spoke. So let me yield to Dan and then I'll speak after him.
All right, DJ.
What are we talking about? We're talking about Trump and look, I think there's, with all due respect to my fellow panel members, I think there's a little bit of hyperbole coming across on both sides here. I think that whatever happens in this election cycle, there are going to be a lot of people who are very upset. We know that. And there are also going to be a lot of people who are very scared. On the Republican side, they're going to be scared that Kamala is going to bring in this socialist utopia kind of thing and that she's going to put price controls into place. And on the left, they're going to be very scared of Donald Trump because they've seen him before and what he can do and of this threat that he poses to democracy. I would argue that there are many safeguards in place here. Regardless of who gets elected, there's always going to be someone to push back on this stuff. I don't think any one of these candidates, if they are elected to the presidency, is really going to be able to get much done. I mean, in the best case scenario for Trump, he's going to have maybe 3 or 4 Republicans in the Senate, the new Senate, and he's going to have a very slim majority, if any, in the House of Representatives. Same thing with Kamala Harris. So I'm just a little concerned about what the American people think is going to happen when these two candidates take office, because I really don't think that it's nearly as dangerous and as bad as people believe it is.
All right, Mary, go ahead.
So I'm going to say that one of the biggest things about Donald Trump that bothers me the most is that when you elect Donald Trump, like for all of his bluster and for all of his incendiary comments, when you elect Donald Trump, you don't really know who you're electing because he doesn't really make decisions. Like he doesn't have a platform. He doesn't have a thought process where he has a vision. Like he's never outlined a vision for the country. He pretty much campaigns by saying whatever it is. And I go back to what you said, Dan, whatever it is gets him the most publicity and allows him to take up most of the air in the room. What really bothers me is that he doesn't really care about the judiciary. He doesn't really care about sort of the agencies or the economy. He really only cares about Donald Trump. And the problem is when you elect Donald Trump, there's a whole sort of apparatus behind him and people making decisions that we don't know and we didn't elect because he's a person who stands for nothing. And that sort of scares me. He stands for nothing and he says anything, which is, I think, what scares the rest of the world. He doesn't want to be president. He just wants the title of president. He wants to be the most powerful person in the world, but he has no real desire to do the job. I mean, that's just how I look at him. I mean, Mitch McConnell last time Trump was in, used that as the opportunity to recreate the judiciary in a vision that he saw. Donald Trump didn't care who was on the Supreme Court. He didn't care who the judges were. I mean, so it really is all about the fact that he really isn't running the country and he really doesn't have a vision and he doesn't have a moral compass.
All right, we're going to stop for a moment. Great show, good discussions. Interesting. Here again is Howard Mallison, ladies and gentlemen. Please, Howard.
Wait a minute, 1 second, Richard. Let me get my gallery view. There it is. Driving these days is really like driving in an obstacle course sometimes on the Beltway. It just amazes me how crazy some people drive on high-speed roads. It's really it just is scary sometimes to get on the Beltway or I-83 or any one of the high-speed highways around town because they weave in and out of lanes. And there's no wonder there's so darn many accidents. Leading Edge Auto Body and Mechanical Repair want you to know that the insurance companies can't tell you where to take your car. Check out their reviews on Yelp and their 5-star reviews on Google. Leading Edge works on all makes and models, offers free pickup and delivery anywhere in the Baltimore area. Give them a call at 410-433-6433 or visit them at 5807 Falls Road in the heart of Mount Washington. They make your car look and run like new again. You know, without a doubt, Baltimore is one of the best, if not the best, diner towns in the country. And the
Sure.
most popular and award-winning of them all are the Double T diners. TT means totally terrific. For breakfast, lunch, or dinner, the Double T menu offers you so many choices. You're going to want to order everything, and everything is delicious. Plus, you have to save room for dessert. With locations on Route 40 West, Perry Hall, White Marsh, Annapolis, Pasadena, and the EC Diner in Ellicott City. Plus, Monday nights are lobster night at By the Docks in Middle River, all part of the Double T family. Back to you, Rich.
All right, we don't have a lot of time left. I want to hear from you guys on the Hogan also Brooks race. A newly released poll from Emerson College polling DC News Now on the Hill shows also Brooks now holding a 14-point lead over Larry Hogan, 54 to 40%. Frank, briefly, what do you think of this race?
I have to agree that the polling in this particular case looks rather ominous for Larry Hogan. Right now, if I had to put money on it, it probably would be that also Brooks is going to win the election. And I say that because she's going to win Montgomery County. She's going to win Prince George's County. She's going to win Baltimore City. She's going to get significant votes in Baltimore County and maybe even in parts of Anne Arundel County and Frederick County. I think it's a very ominous sign as far as Larry Hogan is concerned. And I think the reason why Hogan is falling behind is because even Republicans are skeptical of Larry Hogan as the result of his lockdown during the COVID pandemic.
Right. Okay. Billy, let's be brief, everybody, because we're running a little short. Billy, go ahead.
Let's get back to polling, since that's central to what most of us are saying. Polling sells newspapers better than substantive issues. It keeps people riveted to their seats. As the pundits say, who's going to win, who's going to lose, this, that, and the other. It also helps raise a tremendous amount of money for the candidates. That doesn't mean it's accurate. It's not going to be accurate because so many people lie in the polls. So many people don't want to participate in the polls whose opinion matters in terms of the outcome of the election. There's so many flaws in polling that pollsters have never been able to get it right. So I think that this election is going to go to Harris, as it should. And I think we're going to see working people benefit from her presidency, unlike a Trump administration. And last, it always amazes me how people who get emotional about things lose sight of who they ought to pick, who is going to act and have policies in their own best interest. And part of that is because Trump appeals to the most undereducated part of our electorate. And he brags about that. And he brags that if he were to go out in the middle of the street and shoot somebody, his base would still be with him. Well, that's a problem for America long term.
Dan, then Mary, then we wrap. Dan.
Yeah, well, look, I think the question originally was about Larry Hogan, and I do believe Larry
Correct.
Hogan is going to lose. I think the polls are probably pretty accurate in how much he'll lose by.
Yeah, she's going to win.
I think Angela also Brooks has done a very, very good job, even though it was very deceptive about trying to tie Larry Hogan to as some sort of anti-abortion crusader, which I think it was a successful way to frame him, but it wasn't reality. And look, I also think it's too bad because I think also Brooks, while she'll be another, just another standard vote for the Democrats in the Senate, Hogan would be more moderate. Hogan would be a centrist. And I think the Senate needs more centrists.
And Mary.
I think that at the end of the day, for me anyway, it really didn't matter to me because there's no way I was going to allow the Republicans to have one more person who could help them get a majority in the Senate. So I don't think, of all the people that could be a senator, I don't think Larry Hogan is bad. I don't believe a lot of the things that were said. but it doesn't matter to me because for me, it's about Senate control. And my vote is, I also happen to like Angela Alsobrooks. I think she is a stunning example of a person who has plotted a course, followed it, and been extremely successful at it. I admire her and I respect her. And so I can't be sad that she's going to win. But if I'm being honest, I would have voted for her regardless because there's no way, again, I'm going to cede the Senate to the Republicans.
All right. Any final words except about the Ravens and Lamar Jackson and what is going to happen to Baltimore? Billy, we're going to win the Super Bowl or get into the Super
Let me
Bowl?
make one last point about that before we get in. Yeah, I think we're going to make it this time, and
Well, we're
I
out
think
of
Lamar
time.
Jackson is a genius. But there's so much depending on the race for president because look, if Trump wins, we lose the FBI headquarters. If Trump wins, we may not get the bridge repaired. If Trump wins, a lot of jobs are going to leave Maryland. He's going to discriminate against Democratic areas, and he's going to punish us and reward Republicans. And so there are a whole lot of things at stake here in Maryland. Lots of jobs are on the line if Trump wins. Lots of jobs will be on the line if Hogan wins.
All right, Frank, we'll give you 30 seconds to wrap.
Well, I think we said just about everything that we're going to say about
Okay.
the election. So I'm not going to add any more than what I've already said. Trump is going to win the election with 300 to 305 electoral votes. As far as the Ravens are concerned, LaMarvelous Jackson is going to win his third MVP award.
Absolutely. And you four win our MVP awards for our first hot election show. Thank you, Dan.
By the way, Richard, he's going to be in a close race with Derrick Henry. So we've got two MVP candidates, and that combination is miraculous.
Well, this kid was Murphy is coming back, the running back last year, who was a rookie and did great.
No, not Murphy.
Mitchell.
Mitchell.
Oh, yeah, he can light it up.
Oh, man, he sure can. So anyway, thank you, Billy. Thank you, Frank. Good to have you back. And Mary, of course, and Dan. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us. Another election special coming up next week when once again we square off. Goodbye and vote, vote, vote.